Order. Members, the House and Committee for consideration of the Summary Offences Possession of High-Powered Laser Pointers Amendment Bill is resumed. Members, before the dinner break we were debating Clause 2. David Bennett at that time had the call and he's got just over a minute and a half. Should he wish to avail himself of the opportunity?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
David Bennett.
Half just as a warning to the Chair, because this is a very important section of the bill, and it was part of. Is this all right, Carol? Yeah, you're right. It was something that was debated long and hard in the Select Committee, and that was around the commencement date. And I'll just read it to give a summary of people that that may have missed it just before the dinner adjournment. This Act comes into force on the day that is 28 days after the date on which it receives the royal assent. So, as everyone can see, that's very clear. It's 28 days afterwards. That's the month of February, effectively. But for those that look to do it on days, except in a leap year, yes. Mr. Sabin from the north is very correct. And it is also the Honourable Tom Buckley's wife's birthday, and we'd like to see that.
Absolutely.
The relevance is 28 days. 28 days is the period that the commencement comes in after it receives the royal pie. Yes, and as Mr. Macleay says, if he misses the birthday, it is a summary offence. So he would get more than a handheld laser, I'm sure.
So my birthday, I get a taser.
Yeah, you get a taser. But effectively, what the committee had to look at it when we were in the committee, the Select Committee, was that timing. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the mover of this bill, the Dr. Cam Calder, great, Mr. Chair.
David Bennett.
Dr. Cam Calder, who was bringing this bill forward, sought a date of immediately on achieving the royal assent. Now, the choice of the committee was, do we do immediately or do we do some other date which would be seen as prudent and reasonable? And the committee came to the decision that 28 days was the reasonable approach. Now, well, it's very interesting, actually, because we did receive advice that it should be longer than 28 days. And I'll come to that. That might need another 5 minutes when I come to that. But so the options were basically longer than 28 days or the immediacy of it. And in the end, we decided as a prudent committee that we would settle on a month. And so 28 days was the time. Now, as Mr. Calder says, far too long, and I can understand his desire to see this piece of work enforced as soon as possible, because who would know when in the next incident would occur, if it occurs within those 28 days? Are we actually putting people's lives at risk? We cannot be sure, and that was the debate that concerned the committee for much of its time, and it was a very serious issue, because we take a risk in that 28 days that there may be an incident, and that's the nature of it. But the reason, and Mr. McIndoe, just a very good member from Hamilton West, who's just returned from overseas and come back to New Zealand, and good to see you here, Tim. Yes, yes. When we considered that period of time, the question was, why not go immediately and why have a period of time? And it was because to give a sense of understanding, education to the community around this change in legislation, because there would be some people that do have handheld lasers, and they may not be aware that suddenly they had become under the rules. And so for education purposes, for those legitimate people in the community that may hold these products, and that hold these products, so I said, Tim, and that we're in a state that may have been engaging with them, would need to know that there was a period of time in which they would then become aware that the actual the laser itself was the issue. So the reason is to give a period of time for education, so people are well aware of the circumstances of the bill. And it was felt that if it was an immediate commencement, that there is the potential that there will be some people that didn't receive that notification. And we didn't want to put anybody at risk, but at the same time we had to balance that. If we left it for 3 months, that's a long period of time where there could have been another incident within that period. So that was the difficult balance that they had, and it was the wisdom of Solomon, and that's because we have such a fine committee there, and I'm surrounded by good committee members in front of me here that spent hours poring over these finer details, and took a very considered approach in the end to this bill. So, Mr. Chairman, if we go back to clause 2, that is why we settled on 28 days. It is a date that would achieve the purpose of being relatively quick after the passing of this bill, so that it's not a period of time that is too long, but it is also a period of time which does enable people to be notified and made aware of the consequences of this very fine piece of legislation. So, in essence, that's the dilemma that the committee found itself in. And the decision was made to stick with 28 days, and we find that is a very good balance and will achieve the purposes for all concerned. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mike Sabin.
It appears I've blown the opposition away, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, look, I just want to pick